Hey guys, today I'm here with Rob, and we're going to be talking about designing for email. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Doing well, thanks, man. If you want to go ahead and share your screen, I'm really excited to learn from you. Email design is a really big topic that I think a lot of people are interested in, so I can't wait to see what
Absolutely.
you've got on the designing for email side.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. So I put together a presentation here about designing for email and specifically about how to boost click-through with your design. So we're going to talk about simplicity and how you can increase the engagement on an email by doing less. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to go over some questions that you want to look at first. We're going to look at your approach to the copy, the writing, the words, some general design guidelines, the anatomy of a simple email. And I do want to stress that this is not all emails. This is just an example that we're going to look at, and the top 5 engagement tactics that I would recommend really for any designer or any marketer that's doing email marketing. Alrighty, so I'm Rob Knapp, designer, etc., creative professional. I have in-house experience with 3 agencies. I've scheduled millions of sends, so I've been doing email for a long time. I've had access to about 40 accounts and seen analytics on some pretty big accounts with millions of sends. So I'm familiar with the analytics side of things, and I have good experience with HubSpot, MailChimp, Klaviyo, Constant Contact, and some hand code. So I'm pretty well versed in email design. Okay, so before you get started with designing or your email campaign in general, you want to ask yourself, and this is super important, who is your subscriber? If you don't have your ideal target in mind, there's a really good chance that you're going to get off track with your whole project, with your writing, with your design, with your entire approach will be misaligned. So you want to know, number 1, who is your subscriber? And then what single action will they take? And this couples with the idea of simplicity. If you can narrow down one thing that you want your subscriber to do, then you're way ahead of the pack, and you're going to have a competitive advantage with people that are offering too many options and confusing their subscribers. And you just want to know, hey, why is this email valuable to them? So from their perspective. Okay, so this isn't about writing, but if you are writing, a lot of people do their entire campaign. They'll write it, they'll design it, they'll schedule it, they'll send it, the whole thing. So if this is you and you are writing, this is just kind of my little hot take here, but I don't recommend that you write inside of your email service provider's editor. So one of the reasons is that will tend to rush you through the process. So, how long should an email take? An email can take 2 or 3 hours to craft, and it really depends on, the size of your audience and what is the value of that email to you and your business. If you've got 72 subscribers, it's not such a big deal, but if you have 100,000 subscribers, it's not uncommon for a content manager to spend an hour on copy, a graphic designer to spend an hour on the design, a creative director or technical manager to implement it in something like HubSpot. So it can be a team effort that takes a long time. So I do recommend that you outline your ideas first, aim for easy, a low reading level, and you want to pick your winning subject lines towards the end. So one thing to kind of hammer home here is that your subject is going to greatly influence the open rate. So the better the subject line, the more open. So nobody's clicking anything if they don't open your email. So you definitely want to have great subject lines. So that's something to remember. So when you are designing your email, I do recommend that you design your layout before production. So once again, not using the drag and drop editor in something like MailChimp. The reason behind that is when you use drag and drop editors and that's your go-to, you will tend to fill in the blanks. So you look at it like you're painting by numbers. You're just kind of well, here's a spot for content. So I'm just going to drop in a graphic, or I'm going to drop in some copy or whatever. And that's not the ideal approach to a really effective email, is that you want to have the idea fleshed out, and then it's a 10-minute process to lay it out in a WYSIWYG editor versus trial and error, filling in the blanks, painting by numbers. That's a bad strategy. So I do recommend using layout software or sketching it out, even on paper. And this is a nice target. It's kind of hard to do, but if you can get a 9:16 vertical orientation, so you just kind of have, if you took your computer screen and turned it sideways, or, an older smartphone, that's the orientation you're shooting for, and the height. And if it gets a little bit taller than that, that's fine. Everybody knows how to scroll on a phone, but that's just a nice target to keep things concise. And then I do recommend that you design for Smartna Ret phones as the target platform. So that's an iPhone. So if, say you're in something like Constant Contact and it's 645 pixels wide, or whatever their setting is, that you would just want your image width to be twice the what you're seeing on your screen. So if it's 600 pixels wide, design it 1200, so that smartphones, your images are going to look so much better, so much crisper. And also on a MacBook Pro, it'll just look a lot crisper and a lot better. It won't be fuzzy, and that's important. You want your design to be crisp. Okay, so for your email subject line, we're going to dive into the nuts and bolts here. I might have missed one. Let me scroll up here. Okay, so the anatomy of a simple email. So once again, this is not all emails. This is an email. It's just a good fundamental approach to how to knock out a marketing email and design it for click-through. So you've got your subject line, pre-header, branding, header image, headline, intro, content, call to action, and footer. Lots of elements, and we'll go over those individually here. So the email subject line, in the example that I had, it has personalization in it. So we're sending out an email blast to subscribers to check out a new blog post, and we can kind of look at that graphic a little bit. So we have flex your marketing muscles with smart branding. We have an intro. We've got some copy. We've got a call to action, hero image, etc. So in this example, we're using personalization. So Rochelle, ready to flex your marketing muscles. Anytime you use personalization in the subject, it gives you a little bit of a boost for open rate. You can definitely overdo that, but this is something that you want to A/B test quite a bit. So you want to make sure that your subject lines are working. As soon as you have probably about 500 subscribers, you can do some kind of scientific, research into what types of subject lines work for you. So you can leverage a curiosity gap, and that's something along the lines of, you'll never believe what happened to this little girl, that kind of stuff, where it's like, well, you don't know what the email's about, but you're excited to read it. Or you can just tell them, hey, 10% off for the next 25 minutes. And that gives them some urgency and some specificity as to why they should open the email. So you want to stick to 60 characters or less. That's a general rule. And you want to maybe try out emojis. You can test emojis to see if that's going to help. I personally have noticed that one emoji that's relevant does tend to help my open rates. So I do use an emoji usually, but in this case, didn't call for an emoji. Maybe the muscle arm next to flex, but and then, so once again, great candidate for A/B testing. Moving on, you have your email pre-header text. I personally feel like this is a little bit overrated. You probably don't have to spend too much time here. It functions very similar to a meta description. If you've got web experience, that it's nice to have. It helps people understand the content. It helps for click-through from the email client into the email, but it doesn't serve a lot of value, and it's usually hidden in the HTML render. So that's an option on some ESPs, is to show or hide the pre-header, but I don't particularly spend a lot of time here. It's just good to know. So branding elements. So you do want to include your logo or your social profile, or however people are familiar seeing your brand. And this is just for repetition, is that you're going to send a lot of emails to your list. So when they see that email, they need to be comfortable, recognize it, and then you're leveraging familiarity so that it's just sparking that top of mind, and you're helping them remember what value you've brought, why they like you, etc. So that's just super important to be consistent with your branding. So you can use your logo, your profile pic. If you're sending out something more like a newsletter, some of those have a series name. So, this week's deals, or, Sam's hot takes, or whatever it is. So as long as it's consistent, that's kind of the key, so that they're used to the format. So the email header image. This one, this is just my personal philosophy, but when you're using a header image, I tend to try to make my subscriber the hero. So for this particular send here, the target was females in the fitness industry who are decision makers, stakeholders. So that's why, you know, this is the version of them, you know, once they've enjoyed the content that I'm sending them in the email. So we want to say, this is you, and it's not about me. So I'm not sending a big old picture of myself. I'm sending a picture of how I want them to feel. So that you want to think about emotion, how the person feels, and you have to make sure that you understand who the subscriber is, because you really don't want to guess here. You want to be right on about their journey, how they're the hero, and how you're providing value for them. And with our example, it is taking a little bit of a social feed visual approach, because people are so familiar with scrolling on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn that there is a certain vibe to how you see, you know, a profile image. Then you're going to follow that up with some, you know, post content. Then you're going to see a big image, and there's kind of a comment section underneath it. So I've been using that, leveraging that familiarity in designs, and there's been pretty good results so far, but fairly new and untested, but I think it's working. So, and once again, visually striking and relevant. You want to make sure that it's not something, you know, it's exciting, but it doesn't make any sense, because you don't want to disorient your subscriber before they've gotten to the meat of your email. So your email headline, in this example, it's flex your marketing muscles with smart branding. So what I'm doing is I'm telling them this is about marketing and this is about branding. So if they're not interested in either of those things, I'm curious why they're a subscriber. So they should be interested in those things. And the idea that they're flexing is because, hey, this is a fitness vertical, and that's what we're working with. So I tend to aim for clarity with headlines instead of being too clever. This is an orientation piece for your subscriber that's super important if images are blocked. So if they open your email in, say, Thunderbird or maybe a Gmail on their phone, the default setting is they're not going to see the images unless they choose to. So why would they choose to enable those images? Well, your headline coupled with your subject line are the reasons. So they're not going to see anything else. They're going to see empty boxes. Maybe if you're smart, they'll see some alt text, but that's it. So you want to make sure that this is compelling. And then I don't recommend a carbon copy of the subject line. I've seen that a ton, where it's redundant. So you have an opportunity to add some value and use that real estate to add additional context or content. So, and this can be above or below the header image. So just experiment with what you think looks good, what you like, and look at some of the brands that you subscribe to and say, you know, what are they doing? Some of them are putting the headline below, some are above. I don't know if it matters that much, but it's something to look into. So your intro statement, we're getting pretty granular in the weeds here, but the idea is that you want to start with some form of empathy so that you let the subscriber know that you understand their pain, understand their problem, and that you have some method to add value to their situation so you're not wasting their time. You know, they're not just maybe re-entering a conversion funnel they've already been in, that you're not just bugging them for top of mind, that, hey, you understand where they are, you have something that's relevant to them. And short and sweet is usually the way to go for stuff like that, and you just directly address their need. The email content itself, this example is super short, which is fine. I love brevity. We're just saying that, you know, we published a new marketing strategy article. It's going to help them go from a scattershot approach to laser focused in a short amount of time. That is the meat. That's the idea. It's quick and it's transformational. So that's the content of this, is they're getting something of value from this email. Okay, so this is where I might lose some people right here. But my hot take is avoid columns if you can. Even from someone like MailChimp, they'll send newsletters that have multi-columns and they're, you know, intensive formatting and they're really cool, and that's all great. I have a couple reasons why I wouldn't do that. Is the more presentational information you have in a layout, the lower the ratio of HTML to actual text content there is. And that can be a trigger for deliverability issues. So if your subscriber list is not super hot, super warm, if they're iffy, you know, if your open rate's in the 15 to 20% range, you might be ending up in the junk folder in the spam box. And some of that can be triggers of complex formatting. So there's a reason to avoid columns there. And also there might be 100 different email clients that are going to see this email if you have a large list. So you don't know if the 2005 version of Outlook is going to handle those columns correctly, or if you're going to have a mess of spaghetti on somebody's screen. So presentational errors are very difficult to avoid, and deliverability always needs to be at the top of the list. So my hot take, single column is the way to go most of the time. So your email call to action, this is where it all happens. So you've already specified the desired outcome. You know what they want to do. The subscriber for this particular example wants to go check out a new article. So it's personalized and user-centric. So I'm saying meet your new strategy. So this is for them. It's something that they're going to implement. Action-oriented is I could have said read more or learn now, but meeting something is a little bit more enticing than learning about something. And it's hard to imagine, what is learning? You're by yourself. You could be on the computer, on a phone, but when you're meeting something, it's a very dynamic experience. So that's just something to keep in mind, is you want your call to action to be about the subscriber and about, an interesting action. And one thing is strong in this particular approach is that you want them to buy a product, book a call, link to your visit your website, forward it, or reply to you. You don't want to say, hey, if you don't want to check out this blog post, send me an email and let me know why, because you're instantly giving them options. And the more options that you give people in an email, the less likely that they're going to take any action. So depending on the function of your email, if it's more like a newsletter and you just kind of want to remind them that you exist, that, hey, go browse our catalog of new videos or something like that, that's fine. But if you want click-through, the least amount of options will give you the highest percentage of clicks per session. So that's very similar to something like a landing page. So that concept translates really well from conversion rate optimization on a landing page to engagement and click-through on an email. So the email footer. So this one, the biggest mistake I see is the super footer approach. The 2010 website that has 7,000 links in the footer. That can be fine if you have, transactional email or a newsletter. But if you are this is a marketing purpose, you don't want to send them out to your social feeds. You don't want to send them to your legal notices. You don't want to send them to, wherever. Really, the only link that I recommend, unless you have a really good reason, is an unsubscribe, or you can add somebody to your address book. I don't find that those are clicked a whole lot, but you can ask them to whitelist you. You definitely have to have the unsubscribe option, but I just tend to keep it understated. Remember that it's not a website, and just avoid all of the extra nonsense that can exist in an email footer. So here at the end, kind of to wrap it up, my little summary here of my top 5 engagement tactics is: number 1, always put the subscriber first. That's very important. Is if you're not thinking about who's receiving the email, then your chances of the desired action are going to diminish. So don't write or design in a WYSIWYG editor if you can get away with it. Now, if you don't have the tools, I totally understand. But if you can write it in something like Grammarly or a Hemingway app or a Word doc or something like that, and then design it with either pencil and paper or Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, those are going to give you just a better perspective on the design process. Brevity is best. It's just an email. We always have to remember that. It's not a landing page. It's not an index page. It's not a catalog. It's just an email. From a lot of A/B testing over many years and millions of sends, I can pretty confidently say that simple regularly beats fancy or busy. Not always, but the simple design, the simple solution typically works. And my last tip here is keep the attention ratio low. So attention ratio is just all the things that can grab your attention. You want to have the fewest number of things for somebody to digest with the fewest number of possible actions they can take. So one idea and one call to action would be my recommendation most of the time. Thank you.
Rob, this was fantastic. You far over delivered. Thank you so much for the content, the insight. I actually don't have any questions. Your slides and the content was super clean, clear, concise. So thank you so
Awesome.
much. The question I have for you, I guess the last one is, where can people learn more about you? Where can people find you? Your website, your social handle, anything that you want me to include?
Yeah, I have a, sort of a intermittent presence on the internet. So at the Rob Knapp is my handle pretty much anywhere. I like to hang out on Twitter. That's my favorite for fun. And then my website is robknappdesign.com, which, like all designers, I'm currently redesigning, so it'll be just way better in the future.
Sweet, man. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for these insights. If you're still watching this, shoot Rob a follow, drop a comment below letting us know your thoughts or any questions. Thank you, Rob.
Awesome. Thank you.